Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market. I know that I've been promising to revive this channel, but I think I finally have some motivation to do so. As you saw over the weekend, Pitiless Plunder has hit insane prices here at the regular uncommon at being worth $9.79. You can see this huge jump in the price of Pitiless Plunder. And if we actually go and check over at the foils, it also has had a big price increase. Now, let me tell you, this little dip right here in the market price, this is me. So every time it goes above 50 bucks, I've been putting a Pitiless Plunder back on TCG Player and selling it. We've been selling a couple a day. That's just my price point. Possibly I could go a little bit higher as we are basically the only seller on TCG Player, but I think 50 is a good time to get out of the Pitiless Plunder. I think that it's just good profit margins when we got in at I think we got in between 10 cents and 24 cents for the Pitiless Plunder foil. Now, if you remember, this was a spec that we did call years ago when the Ixalan was rotating, and I was a lot more active in the community back then with the MTG Finance, and I think the biggest issue is success, is why I haven't been doing much MTG Finance. And let me let you know what I mean by that is my store is just been very successful in the past couple of years. All my attention has been diverted towards running the store and the Patreon and whatnot. But someone let me know about this Plunder going up. I mean, I've been out of the game for the MTG Finance for quite a while now, and I do feel like I'm in a position again where I have time. I've got everything established. Everything is kind of on autopilot now with the way my business runs, that I can focus again on the MTG Finance. And I think that we're in a very similar situation or scenario with where Rivals of Ixalan was, going off kind of a lull of that was a pretty bad standard. There wasn't a lot of people investing at this time period. And if we look over the sets that are rotating right now, the same is true. I think a lot of people were had cold feet with Ixalan, or not Ixalan, excuse me, they did have cold feet with Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan and Amonkhet and those, and we've seen how that has played out. There just wasn't a lot of investment. They didn't get printed a lot. There was not a lot of box openers, and there was a lot of lack of supply for cards, comparatively speaking, from other Pioneer sets in the past, especially with the Battle for Zendikar and the Concept Arcure era. And I think that people had cold feet with Throne of Eldraine, with Ikoria, with Theros Beyond Death, and with Core 2021, because they were the first sets with the Collector's Edition boosters, and we didn't know exactly how that influx of product with Collector's Edition boosters and set boosters, I think set boosters came a little bit later than that, but we didn't know exactly how that would affect the overall numbers of cards, and the markets did crash on cards from these sets. But we've seen these sets very reminiscent of Ixalan, where we've seen some recoveries before they've even rotated, and that's a very good sign for these sets going forward, for the rotating sets out of standard. So our goal is to find the next Pitiless Plunder. I think I've got some uncommons that I do like that could be the next Pitiless Plunder in 2 years. Of course, this did take 2 years, so you got to keep that in mind. I still do prefer to invest in singles rather than sealed product. I know it's a lot of other people's bread and butter because it's pretty it's guaranteed to go up, but the profit margins are so much better. The storage is so much better if you can actually pick the right type of cards. And how you do so is you just look at the tried, tested, and true Commander format, and that's where I like to sink all of my money. So this is exactly what I did with Pitiless Plunder. I think it came to my attention because I built like 3 or 4 Commander decks at the time period. I'm like, Pitiless Plunder goes in this deck. Pitiless Plunder goes in this deck. So I remember, I think it was Channel Fireball that I checked at the time that had 50 of these foils for, I think it was like 11 cents or 12 cents. So I emptied the cart, and then immediately another 50 were put on Channel Fireball at a little bit higher. And I remember I bought out Channel Fireball. It was a little over like 100 and something on their website, of just increasing it by 50 every time. I think I had to find a bunch of bulk rares to get their free shipping to add on the package, but just kept doing that over and over until they were emptied. And their algorithm did increase the price of them slowly, but it wasn't enough to really spike the price where I got cold feet with Pitiless Plunders. I can continue to buy. I think that the last batch of these that I did buy was 24 cents for foils. This is foils, not non-foils. So you've seen that's a huge return on foils. So I don't think I really did invest in the normals, though. I'm kicking myself for that because foils was the one that I focused on, as the price points were basically the exact same. So that's one of my things, is I don't follow my own advice. I wish I'd go deeper, but if you do go extremely deep on cards, then you end up being competing with yourself. And that's kind of what I've done with Pity This Plunder is, every time I put stuff up, I crash the price of the product, and then it goes down. So you can see here that, again, this is all us continuing to put on a couple at a time at 50. Again, I might experiment with going a little bit higher to see if they actually will sell, but we've kind of stabilized the market now at $50. So anyway, with that huge introduction with the revival of Rogue Market, I've given some 4 picks of rares. So for this video, the metrics for this one are going to be, it's got to be the price point has to be lower than its counterparts in the set. So that's one of the things that I look at. I try to find reprints. If there's any reprints, I don't like to pick cards that have been reprinted. So we want to keep in mind if they were in Challenger decks, if they were in Jumpstart, if they were in a number of other places that could include them, that does affect the price. And doing your research, your due diligence is going to identify the ones that actually have lower supply, comparatively speaking, to the higher supply counterparts that have been reprinted. And if you do find ones that are lagging behind in that price point, comparatively speaking to all the other cards in that set, that's always a good sign to buy into that card. So that's kind of my theory of investing into cards. This is the time, summer, before rotation is when I like to get into these particular cards. Some of them do have overlap with standard, so their prices are going to go down, or at least their supply is going to be injected into the supply line as people naturally sell off their standard decks and move on to the new rotation of standards. So, alrighty, with that introduction, with that giving the metrics of what I look for, let's get into the first set, which is Throne of Eldraine. So the Throne of Eldraine is one of them that did have high supply. It did have Brawl decks, it did have gift boxes, it did have a lot of reprints. Actually, it was a set that did get a number of reprints from Wizards of the Coast, meaning that they... So let me explain for those of you who might be new to the channel or might not know how this process works. Is these have print to demand. Basically, a Magic set is print to demand, meaning that Wizards of the Coast can always print the set until it rotates out of standard. They have given warnings, like right now, Throne of Eldraine is now out of print, so is Ikoria, so is Core 2021, and now so is the Theros Beyond Death. I have seen some emergency printings, but it looks like Wizards is not going to reprint these because it would just crash. And the printers are so tied up with other stuff that I think that they're just like, yeah, it's enough supply of this sets. We're not going to reprint, even though it is still legal in standard. So booster boxes have gone up at distributor price for about $100 a booster box for Throne of Eldraine, $95 for Ikoria, and I think we're still at $90 for Theros and Core 2021. So those have creeped up beyond their normal Wizards of the Coast kind of distributor price that stores can usually get in on. Anywhere from $78 to about $83, $85 is usually the price that distributors charge. LGS is based on kind of what your level with them is. So that gives you kind of a idea of the supply is already starting to go very low with these sets. If this is comparing it to things of yesteryears, Return to Ravnica was available at distributor price for like a decade. It was available to be purchased from distributors for almost a decade at that distributor price. So there was a lot of overprinting in that time period. And I actually think that Wizards of the Coast has moved back from these and then gone more into the collectors, which actually means that there's less supply than you would have of these particular cards if they were just going to blow out cards in booster box fashion. So I think that these sets is going to, in the long term, that the average card of these has a higher chance of being able to go up than something like the good old Battle for Zendikar or Ravnica, Return to Ravnica era type cards. So anyway, so here's Throne of Eldraine. I'll give you a quick overview of how I look for cards. So basically, go out into here for EDH Rec, and these are sorted by percentage. I wish they just support it by numbers, but you can look at all the cards that do see play in their various commander decks. So Fairburrow Elder, I do believe is just in the Brawl decks, but I think it was found somewhere else so you can get this card. And so the supply of the Fairburrow Elder is quite high. And then the Return to Wildspeaker just got a reprint, so that's what it's got going against it. And you can kind of look down here, and the first one that really sticks out to me is going to be this Castle Locktwain. So Castle Locktwain missed, it dodged the reprint. As far as I know, someone can correct me in the comment section below. Again, do your due diligence. I do not believe it's had any other reprints than just the collector's edition type cards and its normal printings. So Castle Vantress did. It got reprinted in a Challenger deck. I don't think Castle Garenbrig did, and that you can see the price. There's something's got to give with these two. Castle Garenbrig is much higher than Castle Locktwain, but Castle Locktwain is actually used in much more decks than the Castle Garenbrig. And so I think the Castle Lochtwain is due for an increase. There might be more supply because maybe this was added in like pre-release pack or promo packs you get from like they do the Ikoria run. And I think we just got our Strixhaven ones in, and they have like a list of cards that can go in those particular ones. And they usually have like the little promo stamp here. And I don't know if Castle Garenbrig got missed with that or not, but from what the information we have at the moment of what I'm working off of, this is a higher demand card with the same supply, and so one of them has to give. There's some other goodies in here like Mirror Maid. I wouldn't fault you for going on Mirror Maid. Castle Ardenville did get a reprint in I believe a Challenger deck or another reprint. I believe this one did get a reprint. And so again, Castle Lochtwain sticks out as the card that just sees a ton of play in every black deck. 10% of all black decks of EDH have been including them, and so the price of this naturally will go up. And then you can do some other research of see. One of the things I also look for is it being played in new commander decks. So do new commander decks like this card? 40% for Tegrid, 33% for Varagoth, and the 32% for this Fane the Broker. So that is a very good sign for the Castle Garenbrig, meaning that new commanders are running this at about a 35%, if you average it out, rate of wanting to bring in the Castle Lochtwain. Now, why I love commander players so much is they are the least likely out of all the demographics to break apart decks. So when they build new decks, they keep their old decks and they go, oh, need another copy of Castle Lochtwain, I'll go buy one. And then there's one more out of the supply, and one more doesn't get put into the supply because they cannibalize a deck to, start over a new deck. Now, there are commander players that do that, but by and large, that's what I've noticed about commander players is they are more likely to keep their decks than tear apart their decks. So this is a good sign again with Castle Lochtwain that it's going in many new decks are running the, you can even look here like Veto. I wonder if EDH Rec hasn't updated for a while because I think this would definitely go in like pest-based decks. It would definitely go in the new commanders from the Strixhaven. And you can also look at this card too, look at Modern Horizons coming out, look at Forgotten Realms, and then do same thing. Look and see, is this going to be a card that's going to be put in those type of decks? And this is just such a versatile card that I would say yes. The last thing you want to look at, maybe there was a reprinting here. Maybe this is the Ikoria Promos. I believe it was here. So we did see this go down right here, but it has started to recover from all the way from $3 now to about $3.75, which is a good sign. This is what you want to see. The first start of the trajectory of going up is going to be very flat, and it's not going to go up quickly. And we can go back to the Pity's Plunder, same thing. Look at the Pity's Plunder trajectory. Flat, 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 supply runs out, boom, goes up. We can actually go on to the other one that has a nicer trajectory. Same thing. It's flat for quite a while, recovers, and then you start to see a huge increase when the supply does run out and the last copies are sold, and then everyone realizes they don't have any of these particular cards. And this is why I like these under $5 cards, because they sneak up on you. They're something that have the biggest chance for the highest returns, and if you're smart on the way that you actually sell cards and don't get killed by TCG Player fees, the reason why I'm selling on TCG Player for Pity's Plunder is the fees in a $50 card is much less percentage-wise than if you try to sell like a $3 to $4 card. For $3 to $4 cards, these are things I look for other outlets like Buy List, or having a store gives me an opportunity that some of you don't have, that I know my commander players are going to eat through these, that I can actually sell them at retail price. So you got to do what's good for you. I think these are, even the $2, $3, $4 cards are still really good buy list wise, because Card Kingdom and other buy lists can get very aggressive when they run out of stock of particular cards to refill their inventory. The worst thing for Card Kingdom, as far as they are concerned, is having a dissatisfied customer coming in and not being able to fill out a cart of cards that they want. One card in stock leads to more cards being sold when they do try to go for free shipping and add more cards. So keep that in mind. With buy lists, the buy list a lot of times can be it's something that has a better return than going the TCG Player route. All right, so let's get back on focus here. Castle Lochtwain also has the good signs going for that. So my pick out of Throne of Eldraine of the card that I am currently looking to invest in, again, you don't want to compete with yourself. Oftentimes, you don't want to just buy out every copy at, let's say, $3. Let's just go on TCG Player and buy out every copy on TCG Player. So you come over here to TCG Player and say, okay, I'm just going to add all of these around the $3 card here that I can get free shipping for. Good thing is just put 4 more. Oh, look, 1,026. I'm going to buy all 1,000. That is quite a few cards, though, from this gaming company. I'm going to buy all these right now. The thing what you do is you've just competed with your ability to actually buy these for lower. So when people go to add more of these cards on TCG Player, they're going to try to undercut these people. So if you buy all the $3.56, no one's going to put them up for $3. 355 or 354. And I'm thinking the supply is still, this is something you also have to look at a daily basis and try to figure out if the market price is really outstretching the supply or not. And if it is, then you can be a little bit more aggressive. But oftentimes I like to just slowly eat up the supply rather than compete with myself and buy a ton of them. So this one, that is kind of a warning sign with that many Castle Locktwains. But in the scope of things, that's not that many, as the more Commander players add them in it to them. I mean, even going back over to Castle Locktwain of the 22,000 decks that have been run with Castle Locktwain, yeah, this easily can get outstretched within a couple of years, or the supply can be outstretched by the demand in a couple of years, and those can actually begin to increase, or at least be those big sellers can actually be drained quite quickly. Alrighty, another thing you can also do too is just come over to Card Kingdom and see what they're actually they're selling for $6, meaning they're selling quite a bit of this card, and you can see what they're selling. They're buying them for, which is $3, which is $3 for the foil, $3 for the non-foil, which is actually quite aggressive comparatively speaking to what these people are selling it on TCG Player. Alrighty, so that's a big overview of how I look at things. So let's go into Theros Beyond Death. Theros Beyond Death is a set that has a lot of goodies in it, but they've already gone up. This is what's crazy about this particular set. You have Dryads, which were the buy box promo, I do believe. They're already up to $15. You have Thassa's Oracle that just got a banning. This is actually a pretty decent one to actually pick up cards because there's a huge influx of cards from Historic, maybe people playing Paper Historic, or people that are just worried in other formats that it will get the ban hammer. And if so, Thassa's Oracle will have some more supply in there, and you can pick those up, and it's just Commanders can outstretch this stuff. Same thing with Underworld Breach, Nyx Boom Ancient. All these ones would be good ones to invest in. I think that they're fine. They're going to go up. But if you look here and then look at this big dip between a $12 rare or $10, $9 rare, $15 rare, and then you have over here with the Helots Intervention. Yes, that's a big jump from 26,000 decks to 14,000 decks. But Helot Intervention reminds me of many things like there was the Overload card out of Ravnica, which was just an uncommon, then it being like a $5, $6 card that is destroys an artifact, or Overload destroys all artifacts. And Helot's Intervention 2 is something you can pump in a lot of mana and actually destroy X amount of artifacts and enchantments. And don't ignore the fact that it also has the target player gains X life. That's catnip to casual players as well. So any sort of life gain deck is going to run this. Any sort of just competitive base deck that wants to destroy artifacts and enchantments, which are the two most important things to destroy in EDH. Helot's Intervention is very good at doing so. It's even if you want to destroy one, you're on par with a lot of other disenchant type spells. If you want to destroy two, there's already a very popular commander card that does allow you to destroy 2 artifacts and enchantments for 4 mana, and then when you start pumping even more mana, you can destroy all the Soul Rings, and it's a very good feel-good card at that point where you can do a one-sided board wipe for all the annoying artifacts and enchantments that are out there. So I think this is going to age very well long-term. I know I've picked it on this channel before, but I think the Helot's Intervention is now time to get in on this. The one thing that is very kind of risky about Helot's Intervention is I think this is a card that Wizard Coast is going to want to reprint. But they've done that with cards like Vandal Blast, and eventually Vandal Blast is even outstretched by the demand of the new supply, and so it is more risky as far as being a reprint. Typically you can look for cards that have key mechanics, and they're a lot harder to reprint in subsequent sets. But Helot's Intervention, I think, is going to be a card that will, if it does get a reprint, it will always outstretch the supply, and it will be a very good card going forward to add to your arsenal of specs. So if we go over here and look at Helot's Intervention, again, same thing. New commanders are running them. You have Halvar at a 35% rating. You have this commander with Loshiel. Again, EDH Rec, I think, just hasn't updated. You do see these in about a 25% rate in these ones. If you go down in other commander decks too, upwards of 60%, 50% decks are running these cards, which is a very good sign for Helot's Intervention. We also go over here and we see that kind of same flatlining out of the demand or the price, but you also do see that it has been going up consistently. So even though it's had a dip recently, which is very, very this is very common for the summer sets, especially with people backing off of buying Magic cards now they don't get free money every month. Then yeah, this is a natural thing that's happening with all of Magic right now. But I think that when things do recover and things get back to normal, then this will continue this normal trajectory we saw from October of 2020 to April of 2021. All right, so let's go on to Ikoria. Ikoria is another card that has some hard specs because there's a lot of multicolored cards in this format, and multicolored again when they are sorted by percentage wise rather than by number wise. It's kind of hard to find these cards. The first one of just monocolored cards, Drannith Magistrate. I wouldn't fault you for going in Drannith Magistrate because this is seeing a ton of play now. In the it's standard right now. It is seeing play because it has some pretty good interactions with the Elite Spellbinder, and I think that it's even seeing more playing like Taxes-based decks in Historic Pioneer and Modern. So it's one of the better ones to shut down people casting cards outside the game, and Commander also likes that because it naturally does just stop opponents from casting commanders from their command zone. So this one does have a kind of high price point. The migration path actually looks kind of interesting too here comparatively to the Bastion of Remembrance. Look how many decks this sucker is being played in. It probably will be more than $1 card long term, but this might just replace some of the other like Kodama's Reaches and stuff where they'll start putting this in commander sets with the cycling ability. But the first one that really stands out to me is the Bonder's Enclave. And so you had to scroll down for quite a while to find this, but it has 10,000 decks that's being run in, and it has a very, very low price point, comparatively speaking to other ones that have 10,000. So you can look at the Ozolith, has just slightly more than Bonder's Enclave, and it's going for a whopping 12. And again, we have to look and see if this was reprinted in any sort of, as far as I saw, I didn't see any printings of the Bonder's Enclave. Again, you might it might be like did they have Jumpstart as Ikoria? I thought that they would have a Jumpstart symbol if that was the case. But if this was, let me know in the comment section below with Bonner's Enclave. However, I do think it is something that will age very well long-term with this $1.50 price point. As you can see here, there are some cards that are new commanders that are playing it, and many of these other decks, especially monocolor decks, do love this card in them. Less like the Koziliks, the Ulamogs, those type of decks do want to run the Bonder's Enclave because it's just a huge upside onto a card that can generate colorless mana. And so I just like this card. I like this card as a budget card for a lot of people just chucking their deck because it's a land with an ability on it. And the more and more monocolored commanders that are printed, it's just going to go in those decks. So I do like the Bonner's Enclave. Has a lot of synergy with many commanders, and there you go. This is why I like it the most, is this one does have a very aggressive trajectory. Of course, this would have been the better time to get in on cards back when it was 80 cents, but I don't think this is where it really starts to ramp up. And actually, this is where I like to invest because this is a whole year that it's gone up slightly. I'd rather particularly buy cards at a slightly higher price with known information than really invest in the unknown. So I think this is a good time for the Bonder's Enclaves to get in on them. Last but not least, we do have the Core Set 2021. Core Set 2021 is very, very hard because some of these cards that I do like have been reprinted in like the Planeswalker decks. In fact, most of these are in the Planeswalker decks or have had reprints already. So Garruk's Uprising is really cool because it's in 12% of decks, but there's 2 copies of these in a Planeswalker deck. And so the supply of these are quite high. And I believe there was one other place that Garruk's Uprising was. So someone correct me if I'm wrong with Garruk's Uprising. If it was in like a Jumpstart, I believe that's the other place it's in. It's like Jumpstart as well as in those Planeswalker decks. We also have Veto. Veto's in the Arena starter kits. So Arena starter kits, speaking of which, someone made a move on these. Arena starter kits were available like crazy a week ago, and then someone bought them all from every distributor. So they bought thousands of copies of the Arena starter kits. I went pretty deep on Arena starter kits. I bought 250 of them, so I have a huge supply of Vetoes. It's been going down. This was a card that went up all the way to $7.50, and it's been just going down and down because I think everyone figured out that you could get these in Arena starter kits and make a profit just by taking out the Veto and flipping the Veto, and then you have the rest of the stuff in the deck as just profit margins. And there was some good stuff in those Arena decks. I'll have to show you the video of that someday. We did record us opening up 250 packs of Arena starter kits to see how long it would take us, and it took forever. That's the TLDR. Anyway, the Sublime Epiphany looks kind of cool too, but the price point's going up. The one that I do like is Teferi's Ageless Insight. This, again, does have, very similar to Garruk's Uprising, it does have a Jumpstart, I believe a Jumpstart printing, as well as a Planeswalker deck printing. But Planeswalker decks don't have the highest supply. They're starting to finally be done with. There isn't many distributors have the Planeswalker decks left. And this is just a card that's in 11,000 decks, which is huge, and is a rare, and is, it's worth a lot less than the Garruk's Uprising, which was a 2 of in those particular decks. So I think Garruk's Uprising has a lot more supply than Teferi's Ageless Insight. 1, just being an uncommon, and 2, being as a double in those Planeswalker decks rather than a 1 of. And I think Teferi's Ageless Insight is just going to be a very good card going forward for commander-based decks. Everyone loves to draw double cards, or draw 2 cards instead of 1, and it's just going to continue to be a casual and a more whale-based card that people like to throw in their deck. So this is my pick for the core set 2021. Again, it has been going in the new commander decks, a 55% rating in this one and 23% in the other one. Many of these other decks are running it all the way into 50% of these newer commanders have been adding the Teferi's Aegis Insight in them. So again, the trajectory is very, very flat. As far as I know, I haven't seen any other printings of this other than in the Planeswalker and in the Jumpstart. Jumpstart did get a new little resupply here, so it's going to affect the price for a while. But long term, 2 to 3 years, I think this is going to, well, in my opinion, outperform Core 2021 booster boxes. Even with the fees and stuff of actually getting out of these, I think you'll make a better profit margin than going into the particular booster box. So anyway, this ended up being a little more rambly than I wanted this to be, but I hope it gives you an overview of how I start to look at cards when I go to sell them. These are all the things that I look for. Again, this is a pretty good spread here with Commander, or with Card Kingdom wanting 223 of these at $1. So that gives you the overall aspect of their demand. I know they're very, very automated here at Card Kingdom, or whenever they sell cards, it just automates it to like, oh, we need to fill up a certain inventory of every particular card. So you can actually exploit the market by really looking at the data that's just freely available from Card Kingdom, just with their quantities and whatnot in their buy list and their price. Anyway, again, this ended up being a very long, rambly video. I'll get back in the swing of things of doing things short and sweet. But there are my top 4 cards from each one of the sets that I think are good specs long-term that will be able to double up or triple up. That's what I'm really thinking with these particular ones. In fact, I made a friendly bet with a friend of mine that is into cold foils from Flesh and Blood. And so I bought $400 worth of Healed Interventions. I think my price that I bought into them was around $220 to, I bought them for like all the way in the 170s to the 220s. So I actually paid a little bit more than this market price for some of them. And our friendly bet is there's a cold foil that's worth $400. I can't remember which one it was. So I have $400 worth of Healed Interventions versus $400 of the cold foil from Flesh and Blood. And in 2 years, I want to see whose inventory is worth more. Yes, it's probably pretty easy to sell one card rather than 200 Healed Interventions, but this is actually manageable to sell 200 Healed Interventions, especially when a buy list does go up. If it goes up to $4 to $5 for a buy list, got in at 2, there's my profit margins right there. It probably won't go up to that. I'm probably looking at like either unloading these for in the $3 to $4 range after fees. Like that's my profit margin, so getting about a double up from these, and we'll have to compare it to see if that cold foil does actually outperform. I have some pretty huge warning signs about Flesh and Blood. Yeah, I understand that they do have like this first edition type collectability to them, but I really think the game has to grow long term for people to even care about these first editions, especially Monarch. I think Monarch has a lot higher supply in the first editions than some of the sets that have been printed before it, and all these cards are still available in other versions as time goes on. The coin foils aren't even that special. They didn't look that cool in my opinion, so I have to wait and see if collectors long term even think that cold foils are something that are some that are going to go up in long-term value. Yes, the ones from the previous 3 sets have, but I think they're going to be the anomaly in these as people start to figure out the print runs and the long-term demand of them. But again, that's a whole video for another day. Now I'm really rambling, and I should just close this video. So be looking forward to another one. I have some good ones for kind of the same type of strategy for Pioneer, or I think that my other video that I'm working on is around the Shadows of Innistrad era of cards, and there's some good ones too that are just stick out like a sore, or they stick out because their price point is a lot lower than their counterparts of those sets, and something's got to give. Whether they get reprinted or not, if they don't get a reprint, I think they'll go up, but that'll be a video for another day. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.